Hi, I'm Janet. I'm the dietitian on a mission, and I want you to stay tuned for our upcoming show. We have a great lineup today. Allison Duffy, Dr. Matt Laporte, and of course our chef Nicolette. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Janet Calderwood. Welcome to the Dietitian on a Mission. I am so pleased that you're tuning in today. We have a great show lineup for you. And for starters, I have Allison Duffy. She is one of the best dietitians on planet Earth. Trust me on this. And she has a wealth of knowledge that she's going to share with us today because, you know, when we think about our health, it's important, right? Everything that we do, the foods that we eat, Allison, are very important.
Right, of course.
And you are very important to me. If you're watching this show, it's because perhaps you want to learn something about eating better or living better, living healthier, and we want to help you. So we're glad that you're tuning in today. And I want you to invite you to go to the website too. If after the show or at any time of your busy schedule, you can go to www.dietitianonamission.com for more information and valuable resources. Help at your fingertips, I like to call it. But back to Allison. Allison, you've been a dietitian for many years and you have a plethora of information for a lot of people because you too share that same goal of helping people live better.
Right, and nutrition is so key to that. That's what we always try to say to our patients and what we also try to live our own lives after.
And isn't nutrition a science? So it's not just a whole bunch of suggestions and things like this. It's actually a science.
It is a science. We don't only offer our opinions on subjects, we back it up with evidence-based science that has been researched and found to be verified versus what might just be the hot topic for the day.
And we're not delivering the hot topic for the day, even though it is a hot topic. We want you to have the accurate information so that you can be able to separate fact from fiction. So we're going to start this topic off right now about whole grains. And I'm calling this show The Goodness of Grains because they have a lot of health benefits.
One of my favorite topics. I love grains. I love talking about grains. It's kind of gotten a little bit of a bad press in the past few years, very undeservedly so. So we're going to talk about what benefits the grains have, what they do for us, what we look for in them, and also maybe how to make them even yummier than they are.
Chef Nicolette has a surprise for those people that are watching today. We're going to learn a new and better way of making a grain and something maybe that people aren't familiar with. But let's start out by identifying what is a whole grain.
A whole grain is basically how you would find it in nature. When you see the wheat plant, for example, and that's just one of many, many grains, or the rice plant, or even water plants frequently are grain-based. So when they grow, at the very top of the plant is the kernel. And those little kernels are the seeds of the plant, and that's what we use for our grains.
Okay, and when we talk about a whole grain and this kernel, like we're using the wheat kernel as an example, there's three parts of that whole grain, right?
Yes.
There's the germ, the endosperm, and the bran. And when an individual is eating a whole grain, when we choose to buy the whole grains, we're getting those three parts packaged together in the grain as compared to a refined grain. Now, what differentiates a whole grain from a refined grain?
Well, just like you said, it's pretty much how you find it in nature. It's all three parts. It's the complete kernel that you're eating.
Okay.
And refined grains came around In the advent of industry in the 1800s, when they would start to process, it became a lot less expensive and a lot easier to separate the inside from the outside, essentially, of that grain. And what that did is it made it easier to grind down and use in recipes, and it just became more common to do.
Okay, and so with refined grains, what a lot of this processing does, it eliminates the valuable portion of the kernel. The germ and the bran are essentially removed, and all that's left is that starchy endosperm.
Correct, and that's the bulk of the plant.
And when I think about growing up many years ago, I'm not going to tell you how old I actually am, but when Wonder Bread was the big sandwich bread for school lunches, and my mom used to use whole wheat bread, but I was envious of all those students in my class that got their sandwiches made with this soft Wonder Bread, which was one of these refined grains.
Essentially devoid of most of the nutrients that you were getting with your whole grain bread. I grew up the same way. My grandfather only purchased multigrain bread, and I grew up eating that great chunky, oaty, meaty bread that I still love. I still only buy that. So we were both very fortunate in our youth to learn to love the multigrain breads.
And so anyway, whatever people eat, there is plenty of health benefit that they can derive from that whole grain.
Correct.
Compared to something that's just what we call a refined grain or the white bread. And we want to share that with you. We want you to know what those benefits are. So Allison, take it away.
Well, number one, first and foremost, my favorite is the fiber.
Okay.
Everyone needs the fiber, and in whole grains you're going to get both soluble and insoluble fiber. And the insolubles are basically what you eat that stays almost intact as it moves through the digestive system, and that's what gives you the roughage to bulk everything up and make
Keep
the
your
actions
pipes
happen.
I always say keep your pipes running smoothly.
Correct. And then the soluble fiber is what turns into that gelatinous in your intestines. It's a softer feel, and that's what keeps it moving. So you want to keep it bulky, soft, and moving. And that's also what feeds the gut some of those really healthy bacteria that we talk about.
That's important. And so fiber is a big part of the whole grains. If you are eliminating the bran portion of the whole grain, that eliminates much of that very essential fiber part. And you know, Americans in general are only getting about 10 grams of fiber per day. And if a person starts their day off with something like a whole grain cereal or 2 pieces of whole wheat bread, for example, they're going to get a couple of grams of fiber per slice. So that's a nice way of adding the fiber relatively quickly by choosing whole grains as a choice for your grain products.
Right. And not only the fiber, but we have to look at all of the micronutrients, the vitamins and the minerals that are in the whole grains, the B vitamins, the vitamin E, vitamin K, potassium, selenium, magnesium.
The fatty acids, the
fatty acids,
omega-3s.
And protein.
And protein. So that's a great bargain. It's a nutrition powerhouse.
It really is.
And not to mention, when you think about these whole grains, how they have, a lot of researchers have found proven benefits in reducing risk for diseases, helping aid in weight management, and many other things. Why don't you share some of your knowledge with us?
Well, that insoluble fiber that we were talking about actually has been shown to latch on to some of the fats, the cholesterol, even some of the refined sugars, and helps to draw it out of the system, remaining undigested, which remains basically, it can lower your cholesterol, can lower your risk for heart disease by doing that. That's why they talk about oats being the heart healthy cereals.
Yes.
And is another great way to get whole grains in the morning. And when we talk about the enriched refined grains, they're only adding back a few of those nutrients.
Right.
So only 5 of the B vitamins are put back into it, and that's not everything that you can get from the whole grain, especially the fiber.
So what happens is a lot of things are removed through the processing when you're creating refined grains. Some of the nutrients are put back in, but not all of them. So the best thing that you can do for yourself and for your family and everybody that you love is including whole grains really as a part of every grain in your day would be great. The dietary reference intake, or I should say the dietary guidelines for healthy Americans, advocates for the inclusion of whole grains in and throughout abundantly in your diet with all your meals. You know, historically we know that certainly including plenty of whole grains, a whole grain rich diet can reduce your risk for cancer, certain types of colon cancers. It can lower your risk for diabetes, and actually for people that already have diabetes can help effectively manage those glucose levels. Because you have that added fiber, it's going to help prevent your blood sugars from spiking, but more of a steady influx into the bloodstream, which is more effective for people trying to manage their blood sugars that have diabetes.
Right, just like we talked about the insoluble fiber. It latches onto it and pulls it out of the system.
And you mentioned already, certainly lowering a person's cholesterol levels is very key. And for people that are trying to lower their blood pressure even, the fact that these whole grains help the digestive tract can help aid in weight management, and aiding in weight management can reduce all kinds of other problems.
Absolutely, and that's where we're going after the science-based evidence.
And that's what it's all about. And so when we talk about whole grains, and we're thinking, well, gee, you know, we know in our country, we hear about oatmeal, that's a pretty popular one, and certainly things like whole wheat bread. How can people really decipher a whole grain from something that's not a whole grain?
Well, you really have to look at the labels. That's the most important thing. And if it says whole grain, whole wheat, it has the whole product in it.
Okay.
So you definitely want to be looking at labels. I think that's something we push a lot.
Okay.
Knowledge and information is power when you're
Okay.
coming to your nutrition.
And looking for, and there's so many other grains that have been around the world for years and years and years. Like corn is a whole grain. And rice is a whole grain. And even something like wild rice is actually a grass, but it's a whole grain. And when you look at some of our popular ones that we enjoy, like barley and millet and farro, and of course quinoa. Keep that name handy because you're going to hear that again later in the show, okay? But those are gives a lot of variety, and there's so many different cultures that have great recipes. I mean, if you just have so many different whole grains available at your fingertips that perhaps we didn't have access to years ago, right?
Right, and they are often called ancient grains, but that's basically the grains that have been around untouched for hundreds of years. Even wheat is considered an ancient grain.
And truthfully, I mean, when you think about ancient, you're not going to be ancient if you eat them. You might actually be around a lot longer by eating whole grains, but it's important that if you can, you know, look and try for different recipes, you can substitute some of these ancient grains or these whole grains for things that are pretty common for us, like rice or, you know, even barley. We use barley in soup and things, but there's so many other varieties, and it really, it can expand your palate.
Absolutely. Buckwheat is another one.
Buckwheat pancakes.
Right. It just adds another idea to your recipe collection.
So anyway, when you think about whole grains, I want you to think about all these different types that you can include, and a lot of these grocery stores have plenty of them available. If you want more information on that, you can go to the Whole Grain Council's website. That's a great resource for trying to differentiate between types of whole grains. Many whole grains are actually gluten-free too. So for people that have a gluten intolerance, there are still plenty that they include.
There are more grains that are gluten-free than have gluten in them. When we're talking about the rice, the amaranth, the quinoa, the buckwheat, even oats are made frequently gluten-free. They don't necessarily have gluten in them, but oftentimes in the processing process, they're contaminated.
Because they're using the same equipment that
machines.
does use wheat and things that do contain gluten. And then quickly, let's talk about multigrain. You know, you mentioned that growing up that your grandfather gave you multigrain bread, but we can't always know for sure. Just because something's multigrain and you hear that word grain in there, or sometimes manufacturers will say made with 7 grains or something like that. That's not a surefire way of being able to determine if something's a whole grain, correct?
Right, it's not a guarantee. Our labeling in the United States gets a little bit tricky, and it can be hard to differentiate what is truly a whole grain versus not a whole grain. So what you need to do is look for that word whole.
Or 100%.
Or 100%. And the USDA final rule basically said that for a whole grain food, the whole grain has to be the first ingredient, and it has to be 51% or more of the content of the product, and that's what makes it whole. Now, when you talk about multigrain, essentially what that means is exactly what it sounds like, multiple grains. If those individual grains are refined, then it's a multigrain refined food. Another really easy way to tell if something is a whole grain is look at that fiber content on the nutrition label.
And that's really important. So that information that's available on the label is going to help guide your choices to being able to pick out these whole grains. Remember, you might see something that says made with whole grain. That doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% whole grain. So look for the 100, look for the word WHOLE, whole, and that will help give you some indication of a whole grain. I want to thank you, Allison, for sharing this information with us. We have a lot of information available for you at the website. You can visit 24/7, anytime, dietitianonamission.com, not the, okay, dietitianonamission.com. Stay tuned. We've got more ahead. I don't want you to turn the channel or go away. You stay put. See you soon. Welcome back to the show. You're watching The Dietitian on a Mission, and here we are. We're in the kitchen. I've got Chef Nicolette with me, and one of the things that I'm always trying to get patients to do is eat more vegetables. That can be tricky for all ages of patients, whether they're children or even the older generation. Nicolette, tell us what we're going to learn today.
Today we are going to learn how vegetables can be prepared in a very simple, colorful way, extremely healthy, and everybody can do it.
And you know, when you think about, one of the things that I say to people often is eat the rainbow. Eat all the different brightly colored fruits and vegetables, because with each of them you're getting different types of antioxidants and phytonutrients that the other one doesn't provide. And this is a wonderful way to do that.
Yes, it is. So I'm going to walk you through just quickly a little bit of what I did here, all right? Number 1, get a beautiful color of vegetables, as you said. You'll want to start with your eggplant.
Okay.
I have 2 ways I prepared today. I have where I grilled vegetables and where I roasted them in an oven. Same vegetables, the eggplant, the peppers, the zucchini, the yellow squash, onion, a little bit of everything on both of these plates, all right?
So these roasted vegetables, these are pretty simple for people to actually prepare, correct?
Anybody can do this. It's very, very simple.
Anybody
can do it,
you.
and that means you. You take your eggplant first and slice that.
Okay.
And you want to start soaking it with water and a little bit of salt in there if you want, but you definitely want to soak your eggplant first.
Why is that important?
It's extremely porous, and you want to do that for when you do the roasting process. It gives it a much better texture. So you'll be soaking your eggplant. In the meantime, you'll be slicing your other vegetables and have them prepared. I put them out on a cookie sheet.
Okay.
You can even line your cookie sheet with foil if you'd like to.
Okay.
I prepare a mixture with olive oil and spices. I use, of course, garlic. If you want a little flair, a little red pepper in there, a little bit of salt, a little bit of cumin, definitely garlic, always garlic.
Garlic.
You can even use chunked garlic because it's wonderful that way.
Well, I like garlic too, and so I would know that I would be adding that to it. But let me ask you quickly, you said when you're soaking your eggplant, are you soaking your eggplant for just a few minutes? How long do you soak that?
I soak mine about 30 minutes. I soak the eggplant, and that gives me time to prepare everything else.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I slice the other vegetables. I have my oil and my spices ready. I brush them on, and by that time my eggplant is ready. I get my grill hot, and I put them directly on the grill.
What temperature do you think is a good guide?
I grill between 400 to 500 degrees, so that it gets the grill nice and hot. You get those beautiful lines from the grilling mark. You get that nice little bit of a charred flavor on some of the vegetables.
And then this over here, these are
roasted in the oven. If you don't have a grill and you want the same effect, use a broiler in the oven. You can put that in. You'll get a lot of the same beautiful color. Watch them, because I have a tendency to forget my broiler and burn things. So watch your broiler. And once the items come off your grill, put foil over the top and let them finish cooking. You don't want to cook them till they're limp. You want to pull them off when they're still nice and fresh.
How many minutes are we talking here?
For me, I do about 2 to 3 minutes per side on the vegetables on the grill.
Okay.
And then I cover them with foil and let them finish while I'm preparing my other food. And then for the ones in the oven, you will cover them also. Pull them out of the oven as soon as they're nicely browned, cover it with foil, and they will finish cooking through and stay nicely warm.
And how long are they generally in the oven cooking?
And under the broiler, these took me about 5 minutes. I check it about every minute just to make sure they're getting the color that I want, or I'll turn the cookie sheet, make sure each item is getting the color that I want.
They smell delicious. Do you mind if I try one?
Jump right in.
I can't help myself, but I mean, they're just lovely, and and they're soft. I mean, you can use these for what? To make sandwiches, just eating them natural, whatever, right?
I use them for sandwiches. I use them in salads. I use them in quinoas. I use them as appetizers.
Very good. And healthy, nutritious, low calorie, inexpensive, convenient. You don't go away. You stay tuned, because we have more up on the show ahead. Remember, for recipes, visit the website, dietitianonamission.com. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, and Dr. Matthew Laporte is with me now, and we're going to talk about something that a lot of people suffer from, and they're just struggling with it every day. What is sciatica?
So sciatica, and like you said, so many people suffer from it. It's a inflammation or irritation of the sciatic nerve, which is actually the longest nerve in the body. It's in the low back and extends through the buttock and down the back of the leg.
Oh, wow. And so this nerve, obviously, it affects so many portions of your body. That's why probably when they're in pain, it's causing just a miserable situation for these patients.
Sure, and anyone that's had it knows how extremely painful it is. And so the causes of sciatica,
what is the cause of
we have a few
sciatica?
different causes of sciatica. People will present to the clinic and they'll have maybe a disc herniation or disc bulge. So in the
Okay.
spine, we have the vertebrae, which are the bones. Between the bones are a disc, and it's like a jelly donut. There's like a gel-like material in
Don't
the middle.
say jelly donut. Think of another thing.
Think of something
No, I'm
else.
just kidding.
But
So it's like a cushioned
It's like
area?
a cushion. There's a
Okay.
gel-like material inside, and if it pushes against the edge of that disc, that's a disc bulge. If that
Okay.
gel actually comes out of the disc, that's a disc herniation. So both
Okay.
of those can press on that sciatic nerve, giving burning pain, searing pain. It can cause numbness, tingling, even some weakness.
And I mean, it affects people, Dr. Matt. It affects them like when they're driving, and it affects them. Some people can't sit down for very long.
Sitting is really tough for people with sciatica, and I always tell, especially males that have big, thick wallets, take the wallet out of your back pocket
Big,
because
thick
that
wallets.
will definitely not help sciatic type
What
symptoms.
if their wallet's not thick?
Well, I would still suggest taking it out of their back pocket.
Okay.
But sitting certainly aggravates sciatica.
Wow.
There's
Okay.
also what we call spinal stenosis, so it's a narrowing of the spinal column. So that's with degenerative changes, arthritic changes, that can cause sciatica. And then also a piriformis, which is a fancy name for a muscle in the back, extends from the hip to the tailbone. And if that muscle is tight, it can also cause some sciatic type symptoms for people.
So what do people do? I mean, how do they live with this? Is there some type of
So-
surgical intervention? Or?
So surgery is always an ultimate last resort for anything. The good news is that with sciatica, typically people do very well with conservative management. So modalities like hot packs, cold packs, going to see a physical therapist, people respond really well. Some people do need more invasive type of procedures, like maybe a steroid injection.
Okay.
But ultimately with conservative treatment, people do well. Avoiding any type of lifting heavy items. Also when people are sleeping, proper posture. So if they're back sleepers, putting something under their knees, or if they're side sleepers, putting a pillow between their knees to keep that spine in alignment.
Do you recommend, you said hot packs, cold packs. When do you use what?
Yeah, so that's a common question, right? When do I use the hot pack? When do I use the cold pack? So hot is great for loosening up a muscle, particularly in the morning, first getting up, everything's really stiff. Hot pack is great at that time. Ice is good after any activity. You're out in the garden, gardening, or you went out and did a walk, or you played tennis and you come back. Ice is great to reduce inflammation and reduce pain.
Well, thank you for that valuable information. If you have that problem and you suffer from that, then certainly, hopefully this information can be helpful for you so that you don't experience that pain. Make sure that if you're looking for more information to visit our website at www.dietitianonamission.com. Dr. Matthew Laporte will have a corner developed to helping patients live better every day. And I want to thank you for tuning in today. I hope that the information and the guests that we provided to you was beneficial, that you learned something new, useful and helpful for you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for watching today. To find out more about Janet, the Dietitian on a Mission, go to our website, dietitianonamission.com. And if you would like Janet to speak at your event, you can contact her by going to our website, dietitianonamission.com. And you can also leave your comments to ask any nutrition questions you like. We want to hear from you today. So go to dietitianonamission.com.